Picture this. It's 1683. Two massive empires are on a collision course, and they're about to crash right at the gates of one city. The outcome of this fight, well, it would echo for centuries. We're going to dive into one of the most important battles in European history, a day that all came down to one of the most incredible moments in all of warfare.
But let me start with a question for you. I want you to think about every single huge battle you've ever read about or seen in a movie, from the ancient world to today. Where do you think the single biggest, most thunderous cavalry charge of all time actually happened?
Well, it happened right here, at the climax of the Battle of Vienna. An absolutely earth-shattering moment that didn't just win a battle. No, it slammed the door shut on an invasion and completely redrew the map of power in Europe, forever.
Okay, so to really get why this one battle was such a massive deal, we have to rewind a bit and look at the world in the late 17th century. And that world, well, it was kind of dominated by one particular superpower.
See, at this point, the Ottoman Empire wasn't just some regional player. It was a global force. It had this powerful, modern army. It controlled crucial trade routes. Its influence stretched all the way across Europe, Asia, and Africa. And the scary part? It was still growing. For the Ottomans, if they wanted to push further into Europe, all roads led to one city, Vienna. It was the strategic key. If you control Vienna, you control the Danube River. You control the trade routes that go deep into Germany and the rest of the continent. It was pretty much the last major roadblock. In fact, the Ottomans had this nickname for the city that just tells you everything you need to know about how much they wanted it. They called Vienna the Golden Apple. It was the ultimate prize, a symbol of wealth, power, and prestige, and it was just sitting there, waiting to be picked. And so, in 1682, the order finally came down. The Grand Vizier, a guy named Mustafa Pasha, put together a gigantic army with one crystal-clear mission: take the Golden Apple and finally smash through the gates of Europe. By July of 1683, that enormous army was at the gates. Vienna was completely surrounded, totally cut off, and staring down a fight for its very existence.
Let's just talk about the odds here, because they are staggering. The Ottoman army had something like 170,000 troops. Inside Vienna, just 11,000 soldiers, and about 5,000 regular citizens who volunteered to fight. The numbers were it's almost unbelievable.
The people of Vienna knew they were in deep trouble, so they did something pretty extreme. They started tearing down the buildings in their own suburbs, right outside the city walls. Why would they do that? To create a wide, open, deadly field of fire, a kill zone. So the attackers had absolutely no cover as they tried to advance.
Inside the walls, the commander, Count Starhemberg, laid down the law with brutal efficiency. An order like this, it's not just about being harsh, it speaks to pure desperation. At this point, exhaustion and starvation were becoming just as big an enemy as the army outside. And for 2 long, agonizing months, that clock just kept ticking. The siege starts mid-July, and the city is immediately cut off from food. A few days later, the Ottomans start digging trenches, getting closer and closer, and even start tunneling under the walls to plant explosives. And then, by early September, it happens. They break through a key part of the outer walls. The city is right on the verge of falling. But Vienna was not completely alone. While the city was being slowly squeezed to death, a desperate plea for help had gone out, and across Europe, an army was on the march. This was the Holy League, and really it was this incredible kind of patched-together coalition of states that were, frankly, often rivals, but facing this massive common threat, the Holy Roman Empire and the super-powerful Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth joined forces, and the whole thing was led by the legendary Polish king, John III Sobieski. Now, putting this alliance together wasn't easy. I mean, you can imagine the arguments over who was going to pay for what and who was bringing supplies, but they managed to get over it because they all knew what was at stake. So, against the odds, this 70,000-strong army started racing towards Vienna. So, on the night of September 11th, they finally get there, up on the hills overlooking the city. Can you just imagine being one of the defenders down below, starving, exhausted, thinking all is lost? And then you look up at the hills, and suddenly the whole ridgeline is lit up with bonfires. It was the signal. Hope had arrived. So the stage was set for an absolutely epic showdown.
What happened on September 12th wasn't just another battle. It was the day that would end with that history-making charge we talked about. The fighting raged all day long. It kicked off at dawn with an attack on one side of the Ottoman lines. Then, by the afternoon, the Polish infantry was hammering the other side. So now the Ottoman commander, Mustafa, is totally stretched thin, fighting a war on two fronts. And that was the exact moment King Sobieski was waiting for. 18,000. Just let that number sink in. That's how many horsemen Sobieski was about to unleash all at once. And the core of this force? His legendary Polish winged hussars, probably one of the most feared and effective heavy cavalry units in history.
And with King Sobieski himself leading from the front, 18,000 cavalrymen came thundering down those hills. It must have looked like a terrifying, unstoppable tidal wave of steel and horseflesh, and it crashed right into the heart of the Ottoman camp. The lines just shattered, chaos erupted, and in that single moment, the battle and the siege was over.
The victory was complete. It was total, but it came at an incredible price. And its consequences would end up reshaping the continent for good. I mean, a victory like this is never clean. The human cost was just staggering on both sides. The Ottoman army took absolutely massive losses, both during the long siege and in that final devastating battle. And for the city's defenders? Well, they survived, but at a terrible price. Most of the garrison that held out for so long was wiped out. So why do we still talk about this one day in history? Because this was it. This was the high water mark. The Ottoman Empire would never again seriously threaten the heart of Europe. This single battle flipped the script on a 300-year-long conflict. It marked the beginning of the end for one empire's expansion and cemented the rise of another, the Habsburgs. And that fundamentally changed the balance of power for centuries. And that brings us to the final thought. The defenders of Vienna held on just long enough for this totally unlikely alliance to show up and win the day with the largest cavalry charge in history. But just think about it for a second. What if they hadn't? What if the walls had been breached just one day sooner? What would a map of Europe even look like today?